Okay. So I absolutely hate the title of this, but I chose the title so that people would be able to actually find it, but otherwise I actually hate the title. So, In Defense of the Deadlift. Um, and I don't like the title because I don't think the deadlift needs defending. However, um, recently, people keep making posts on social media and blogs and whatever about how, oh, the deadlift isn't good for hypertrophy, and why you shouldn't deadlift. And okay, the problem isn't the deadlift. The problem is the programming. The problem is the way that people are programming the deadlift. That's the problem. This is like saying, like, oh, squats are bad for you, or the squats aren't great for building mass. Or okay, what are you doing? Like, are you just coming in and trying to hit a 1 rep max every day? Or are you doing 20 rep squats? Like, that's a big difference. If you're doing 20 rep squats, like, you're probably going to gain some mass. Um, like, like, imagine a guy who can back squat 405 for 10 sets of 10. Do you think he has small legs? Like, you need me to answer that question for you. So, flip side to that, some guy who comes in and tries to squat his 225 max for one, and then that's his whole workout, and then every day he comes in and, I'm going to do squat every day, but I'm just going to work up to a single at 225 every day. Like, that's not going to be a great mass building workout. Like, that's not even a hypertrophy program. So it's similarly the deadlift. And I'm certainly not going to sit here and suggest that people do high rep deadlifts. Stay with me because I'm headed somewhere with this. Why not like clusters? Um, Jake Tura has a book called Hypertrophy Clusters. This is a fantastic way to implement the deadlift. And additionally, you know, people will make points like, oh, well, mixed grip is a bad way to deadlift because you'll tear a bicep off. Okay, so then just do double overhand. I don't understand why you wouldn't just change things. Like, maybe there isn't something wrong with the deadlift. Maybe the problem is the way that you're doing deadlifts and the way that you're programming it. So, and the other thing I would point out is, are you just coming in and doing conventional every single time? Are you coming in and doing sumo every time? Okay, maybe there's another element that you need to change. So let's say, your goal is hypertrophy. And by the way, I think the deadlift needs zero defense if you're arguing for strength. Okay, can you think of a strong person who's not capable of pulling large weights off the ground? Right. So, like, in terms of strength, there's no debate here about whether or not the deadlift is a measure of strength or whether or not the deadlift develops strength. But if you wanted to use it for hypertrophy, let's say, one, people are over-programming it. So, and I mean over-programming in the sense that they're going too heavy too often. So take something like 80%. So we're going to work at the 80%. And what you'll do is like a hypertrophy cluster. So, let's just make it super simple and make it singles. You're going to do 6 singles. So you do a single, and then you rest 15, 20 seconds, do another single, rest 15, 20 seconds, do another single, rest 15, 20 seconds. Like, you get my point. I don't think I need to actually go through all 6 reps. Now you've got 6 reps done at 80% in a short window with this very short rest in between. Okay, now you're accumulating volume. And you can take that same weight later on, so 80%, and now you'll do like 2 reps on the first set of your cluster here, and then you'll do singles for 5. Now that gives you 7 reps total, okay, but you've now got the stimulus of doing a double on the first cluster. Then you progress that to doing a double and then singles, right? You can see, like, you can very quickly start making small changes to how you program this and how you implement it. And where I'm talking, you're literally using 80% of your 1 rep max in every single one of these workouts. But now we're accumulating volume because you're going to go from doing 6 singles to doing 6 doubles. Or you can change it however you like. Eventually maybe you want to work up to 6 triples. And obviously your 1 rep max would have increased over time because you're getting stronger, okay? And I'm suggesting you do this double overhand, okay? That way you're not going to tear a bicep tendon. Another thing you might think about is changing your stance on a regular basis. So like sometimes you come in and you pull conventional. Sometimes you come in and you pull sumo. Maybe sometimes you do RDLs instead. And sometimes you pull from blocks. And sometimes you do rack pulls. And sometimes you do deficit pulls. And sometimes you do deficit conventional. And sometimes you do deficit sumo. And oh, wow, this is a lot of different variations of the deadlift, so you're not just hammering the same, motor pattern over and over again, and you're not just taxing your joints in the same range of motion every time. So very quickly you can start adding more volume in because you're not just hammering that same range of motion. So again, double overhand, right? So once you start thinking about how you're programming the deadlift, the problem with the deadlift isn't good for hypertrophy isn't so much that the deadlift isn't good for hypertrophy. The problem is that the way you're programming the deadlift isn't good for hypertrophy. And the other problem that you have here, and this is just the reality of things, it's a bit of an ego lift. Like a lot of guys come in and go entirely too heavy. Every time they come in, they want to, I want to slap as many plates on as possible. And it's like, you really do need to check your ego. This is like one of the things I run into even with weightlifting is people do their snatch pulls and clean pulls entirely too heavy. And you're not getting the same benefit anymore. I explained this on my IG once. If you're pulling 120% of your 1 rep max snatch, then the bar speed is, 0.6 meters per second or something, because you're pulling this weight that's too heavy, really. And then you compare that to something like, now you're pulling 80% of your 1 rep max snatch, but now your bar speed's over, 1.5 meters per second or something. Your power output's actually higher. Like your power output is actually higher because you're using a lighter weight, but you're moving it at such a high speed. So now you're doing a snatch high pull, and you're bang and boom. You're getting this, the Chinese high pulls, right? Boom, you hit that power position, you get this good acceleration. Okay, that's a ton of power output. You're not going to do that with 120%. You're not going to get that kind of speed. So it's going to end up being slow, which means that the power output is lower. So even though the weight on the bar is greater, the power output is lower. Okay, you can take that concept and apply it even to deadlifts. If you pull it off the floor and bang, and you really turn your glutes on. There's a video, Chris Duffin, where Chris Duffin tells you why you shouldn't do hip thrusts, and he explains to you whenever you deadlift how you get this good glute contraction from pulling the deadlift aggressively. Okay, if you pull a deadlift fast and aggressively like that, that's very different than if you're constantly trying to hit a 1 rep max deadlift and you're just grinding through this slow rep. So my point to you is maybe change the way that you program deadlifts. Use a lighter percentage, like 80-85% of your 1 rep max, and do something like hypertrophy clusters, because then you can accumulate volume with these, so you can get sufficient volume in, and at the same time it's going to be high quality volume, because everyone knows that if you no one wants to try to do a 20 rep max deadlift. That's dumb. 20 rep max deadlift, your back's going to get tired, you're probably going to get injured. That's not a smart thing to do. No one should ever go for a 20 rep max deadlift. I'm sure some CrossFitter out there will comment in the section below and tell me why I'm wrong, because their max is 225 and they like to do Diane with 225, so it's 21 reps of their 1 rep max or something. I guarantee someone will tell me that they've done that. Please don't do that. If you want to do high rep deadlifts, you better drop the weight way down, and it should probably be RDLs. But that's a different topic. I'm actually trying to focus on the deadlift itself, and I'm saying, when I mentioned that you can use RDLs, I'm mentioning that would be something you'd rotate in, right? So take a week off of deadlifting from the floor and do RDLs. Take a week off of deadlifting from the floor and do rack pulls or pulls from blocks or whatever. But I'm suggesting that the way that you program and integrate deadlifts into your program should have a little less, like, don't come in and pull conventional and go for a 1 rep max every week. That's just not even smart. So I hope you understand what I'm explaining here. I'm saying that you certainly can use the deadlift to build your hamstrings and your glutes. It's just that it's a matter of programming it intelligently so that you're getting the adaptation that you want by choosing the correct stimulus. So I hope that makes some sense. And if you're one of the people posting on social media about how the deadlift is bad for you and you shouldn't deadlift and blah 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 blah, maybe reconsider your position and think about how you could program the deadlift in a better way, so that you're actually getting a hypertrophy effect from it. Because I don't believe that there are bad movements, I just think that there's bad programming. This is like, if you wanted to use squats for mass building, you're not going to come in and attempt a 1 rep max every day. There's a smart way to program lifting so that you're actually getting that hypertrophy response.